Greetings, my name is Monty Martin.
And I'm Kelly McLaughlin.
And we are the Dungeon Dudes. And today we are cracking through and tier ranking more of the subclasses in the Grim Hollow Player's Guide by Ghostfire Gaming.
Today we are going to take a look at the Paladins and Rangers. There's at least one subclass in this section that we wrote, which we're very excited about. So let's take a look at what these subclasses have to offer. There's a lot to discuss today, so let's get rolling. Up on screen right now, you're going to see the criteria that we use to rank the subclasses. We have pitted the subclasses against each other and not those of other classes, although we might mention them if there's some worthy comparisons to be made. Generally speaking, though, an S-tier subclass is one that excels in all categories. It might be pushing the envelope of power levels in the game, potentially one of the best options there are out there for the class. An A-tier subclass is one that is an excellent choice no matter what campaign you're playing in, with really powerful features that are always going to serve you well.
For B-tier subclasses, these are middle of the roads, and often in cases it depends on the build entirely or the circumstances of the campaign. A B-tier subclass might be S-tier in power under the right campaign, circumstances, party, or build. It varies. A C-tier subclass is pretty niche in the features that it offers. It might have strong features, but that only work in very particular conditions, or features that work in a lot of cases, but are only kind of strong. D-tier subclasses, on the other hand, you should really reconsider before you take them. They might have counterintuitive playstyles or encourage you to do things that work contrary to what the subclass is trying to tell you that it does, or features that simply don't work at all or are broken in some sort of negative way.
As we've said in this series, a little bit of a disclaimer is that this is a third-party product. It is created by third-party publishers, Ghostfire Gaming, who Monty and I have worked with in the past. They helped us create all of our Drakkenheim books, and we also were contributing authors on this project as well. A lot of the people who contributed to this project are friends of Monty and I. They've become friends through our collaborations and working together. And we find that we like to be constructive when we're reviewing these subclasses. In the comments, we want to give constructive and kind feedback. We want to make sure that even if we don't like one of the subclasses or think the features are weak, remember that there are people who have worked very hard behind the scenes to create and manage these subclasses and bring them to life at your tables. So be respectful of that.
As before, this episode has not been sponsored or endorsed by Ghostfire Gaming, even though they are our publisher and we have worked with them before in the past and we contributed to this book. We are trying to showcase more of the amazing work that is happening by independent publishers and third-party creators for 5th edition. And we would love to hear if you have any other suggestions for other third-party books with great subclasses that we could showcase on our channel. With that, let us dive into the Oath of Pestilence Paladin. This Dark Knight is a herald of death, destruction, doom, and disease. And I think that for Kelly and I, when we wrote this, we were still, I feel like when we were writing this subclass, we were germinating the ideas that would eventually become the apothecary that we wrote. I feel like that when we wrote this, because we wrote many of these subclasses back in the summer of 2020. I'm not
going to be shy about this. I was in the middle of reading a ton of Nurgle lore when I created the Oath of Pestilence. I was getting into that, and so I was like, ooh, what if we made like Death Guard style Paladin?
Yeah.
But the whole shtick was, I was really into the vibe of spreading disease and pestilence as like instead of like a holy night, you're like, you worship the god of disease and you spread that, and that is you spreading the faith. It's creepy and weird.
So like all paladins, we get oath spells. So in this case, let's pop them up on screen. We've got Bane, Inflict Wounds, Acid Arrow and Ray of Enfeeblement, Flash Fever, which is the new spell in the book, as well as Stinking Cloud, Blight and Confusion, and Contagion and Insect Plague. This is a spell list that I'm proud of because it oozes flavor. You know exactly what the shtick is by the way these spells have been put together. Maybe not the most powerful spells in the game.
I do think that we get half or slightly above half are actually pretty powerful and pretty great.
Yeah.
The ones that aren't powerful and aren't great are still very thematic and niche useful.
That's always the line you toe when you make one of these spell lists, because it's very easy to put an oath spell or domain spell and just load up on the most powerful spells in the game. And in the process, you lose the coherent theme. So here, I'm just gonna give us points for style.
It's all, I think with an expanded spell list, we often rank them based on, well, these aren't the most powerful spells. But I think the most important question, if you give all the powerful spells, you're actually not doing a good job at designing, because you're just, well, here, have everything.
Yeah.
I think the theme is one of the most important through lines for any design intention. Yeah. And I am proud of this spell list because it really delivers that theme.
I think that Bane, Stinking Cloud, Contagion, and Insect Plague are going to be your go-tos depending on the level. And that was kind of what I was imagining, is that this was going to be a paladin that Bane was going to kind of represent that early spreading disease. Stinking Cloud was going to be the more upgraded version. And then, yeah, you would have Insect Plague, which I think we hovered around having Cloud Kill on here as well. But Insect Plague and Contagion felt more disease theme, whereas Cloud Kill is much more chemical feeling. So that's why we went with that. Like all paladins, we got a channel divinity power. Here, this is going to be debilitating fever. This channel divinity, you spend an action, you make a melee spell touch attack against someone within 5 feet of you, and if you hit, they're incapacitated. This is a disease effect, so things that cure diseases end the incapacitation, and it doesn't work on constructs or undead. Well, for the next minute, the target can make a con save at the end of each of its turns to snap out of the incapacitation. It's very rare in the game that an effect incapacitates someone and incapacitates them only. So it's worth noting that when you're incapacitated, you can still move, but you can't take actions, which also means you can't take reactions, and you can't concentrate on spells.
So it can be a really debilitating feature, although the creature is still sentient. Incapacitated, I think, often gets paired with unconscious. But,
or like your speed is reduced to 0 or something else like that. But
in this instance, they're still fully functioning. They're just diseased and therefore can't do a whole lot.
Yeah.
The other channel divinity option is Entropic Infection. As an action, you target a creature within 30 feet of you and they lose resistance to necrotic damage if they had it. And if they take necrotic damage for the first time on each turn, they take additional damage.
7th level, you get an Aura of Rampant Sickness. It is a 10-foot aura, like all Paladin auras, and it allows you to use a reaction when someone makes an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw to just give them disadvantage on that attack roll, ability check, or saving throw. I love this aura.
That's great.
Yeah.
At 15th level, you gain Disgusting Resilience. When you take damage that would reduce you to 0 hit points, you can expend any number of hit dice to reduce that damage by that amount. If you roll more than the damage that you have taken, you take no damage. On top of that, if you are reduced to 0 hit points and dying, and you fail that last death saving throw and die, rather than go out quietly, you explode in a shower of gore, pus, and disease and damage everybody around you.
It's like it's a self-corpse explosion fireball. Yeah.
You're so ridden with disease that dying is nobody around you is safe if you die.
Finally, at 20th level, like all Paladin 20th level features, you gain an Avatar feature, which is going to give you resistance to poison and necrotic damage, prevent your hit point maximum from being reduced, and you are so stinky and diseased that people that start their turns within 5 feet of you are just going to take damage just for being there. So, like all Paladin 20th level features, it's a little bit super powerful, but we wanted it to be persistent rather than like a thing you turn on. I'm proud of the subclass.
Me too. I mentioned in an earlier video that my favorite homemade, like our subclass that we made, was coming up, and this is it. It may not be S tier, but I'm really proud. I think that the theme is there and the flavor is there and the mechanics deliver the theme.
It's a solid A because of the aura. because the biggest thing is that the aura allows you to spend a reaction to give someone disadvantage on an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw. And the thing that I've seen with this aura is it just gets used in play to give enemies disadvantage on your allies' really important saving throw based abilities. And that alone is amazing because there's no limit to the number of times you can use that. It's really strong for that alone. And there's many Paladin subclasses that are basically held up on the strength of their aura. And this is one of those subclasses.
I will say in retrospect, one thing that I wish we had given this subclass is when you read over the channel divinities, one comes out way ahead of the other.
Yeah.
Entropic Infection is actually hard to use because you don't have a lot of abilities to trigger the necrotic damage. You have Inflict Wounds, but are you going to use that every turn? Probably not. If I was designing this subclass again, I would give it an early feature, probably 3rd level, that said that your smites deal necrotic damage instead of radiant damage.
Yeah.
I might have also given this Paladin Spirit Guardians for necrotic damage or something of that sort.
Yeah, it's always tempting to give a Paladin Spirit Guardians because every Paladin wants to have Spirit Guardians.
I would have given it more ways to deal necrotic damage because then it would have made Entropic Infections worthwhile. I feel like right now Entropic Infections, you're rarely going to take that over the Debilitating Fever.
Yeah.
Until your 20th level and every creature within 5 feet is taking necrotic damage. But at 20th level play, it's kind of hard to say that that's worth it. Still, I think this is an A tier subclass.
Good job, dudes.
We like it.
So next up, we got the Oath of Zeal. This Paladin is all about having something that they are zealous against and spending every fiber of their being wanting to destroy it. Sounds like a lot of people on the internet. The spell list has Detect Evil and Good and Hunter's Mark. It's got Detect Thoughts and Knock, Fear and Tongues, Divination and Locate Creature, Insect Plague, and Scrying. I think the spell list comes out swinging with Hunter's Mark. And then, again, it very much has the Inquisition theme, but nothing that I think would be part of my essential kit beyond Hunter's Mark.
Okay, this is a weird thing. I love seeing Knock on expanded spell lists. Knock is one of those spells that I never ever take and always look at and go, man, that would be handy to have. Knock is one of those, I think it's hilarious that the Oath of Zeal Paladin is after you, so you lock all the doors, and it's just like, nope. So although I don't think this is the most powerful spell list, again, it's really delivering the theme, and it makes me smile reading this spell list because there's so much shenanigans that this Paladin is just like, you're not stopping me from hunting you.
Channel Divinity as well comes online here, and the first one is the Mark of the Heretic, which you're going to choose somebody, and you're going to crit them on a 19 or 20, and if they start their turn next to you, you get to use your reaction to attack them.
Great. Extra attacks plus the extra crit range. If it was just the extra crit range, this wouldn't have been good, but reaction attacks plus you're attacking twice, so you're getting the chance of you landing a crit if you're chasing this creature down and you're just like, you can't get away from me. If you're starting your turn, I'm hitting you.
The other Channel Divinity is a non-combat feature, which is going to give you advantage on perception, investigation, and insight checks for a minute, which combined with the spell list actually the subclass has a real, investigator vibe to it.
I think that actually I like what they've done with the two channel divinities. You have your in combat and your out of combat option. And this so far, this subclass is really selling me on, if I'm in combat against the thing that I hate, I'm going to kill it. If I'm not in combat against the thing I hate, I'm going to find it.
Yep. The Aura of Clarity is basically going to shut down invisibility within your aura, which is pretty good, and it prevents you from being blinded as well.
I will say this is a very niche aura, but when it does come up, it's going to be useful. The aura alone, I would say, is not the most powerful Paladin aura I've ever seen, but in that moment where your enemy is invisible, you get to once again be like, sorry, man, you can't hide from me.
Compel Confession gives you the ability to cast Zone of Truth, and someone who succeeds their save against your Zone of Truth, that means if someone succeeds the save, they can still lie in the Zone of Truth, but then if they have in your Zone of Truth, they're going to take psychic damage while they stay in it.
At 20th level, you gain Apocalyptic Revelation. There's a shtick here with Paladins. This is just a list of like super abilities. You can activate it as a action. You gain True Sight. You can blind creatures that are within 5 feet of you. And you can grant advantage on attacks against a creature as a bonus action. Again, it's 20th level, so it's hard to say whether this is amazing. It's a great ability that you're going to use for a couple sessions at the end of your game.
This subclass comes out swinging with the Channel Divinity power and the Hunter's Mark, and then it kind of peters out from there.
I agree. Luckily, it comes out swinging so hard that I think that if this has a theme and a flavor and delivered so hard on it, that it starts way up here. If the 7th and 15th level features had been better, this would have been S tier.
Yeah, I think in light of that, I'm going to give it, like, for multi-classing, this is a really good, for like you Hexblades out there, this might be your ticket. That early level feeling is going to, like, between this and the Oath of Vengeance, Vow of Enmity, the Oath of Vengeance keeps getting these really powerful adds to its overall kit. Whereas this, I feel like it gets some cool out-of-combat utility, which is valuable, but not quite as jaw-droppingly amazing as the Oath of Vengeance.
I feel like this is an A tier subclass. Oath of Vengeance is S tier. But this I think does a really good job of delivering on its theme. I really do feel like if you're the enemy of the Oath of Zeal Paladin, it's a bad day for you.
Yeah.
And whether or not you could be miles away from the Oath of Zeal Paladin, and it's still a bad day for you because you know they're after you and you're not going to stop them.
Yeah. Moving on to the Rangers. We have the Green Reaper Ranger. This Ranger is all about using poison. And I really like the execution of this subclass. It's really, really strong. I think poison is a really cool theme that often gets applied to a lot of other subclasses, but not often Rangers. And then it's a very natural fit for a Ranger to use poison.
Yeah, oftentimes I associate rogues with poison, or mostly rogues. But here we go with a poison ranger. So right away we get some Green Reaper magic. This is going to be some spells that are available for this subclass specifically. These include Detect Poison and Disease, Hold Person, Bestow Curse, Greater Invisibility, and Cloud Kill.
Also at 3rd level, we're going to get Envenomed Attacks. This feature lets us use a Poisoner's Kit a number of times per day equal to our proficiency modifier to coat a weapon or 20 pieces of ammo in poison that lasts for 1 minute. And that weapon or those pieces of ammo deal an extra D4 damage, giving you, instead of that 1 dose of that poison's kit, that 1 vial of poison, it's applying it for a whole minute. So you're going to get a lot of use out of those kits.
Again, to me, 1 minute is code for a combat encounter. So every combat encounter.
Yeah. It's concentration free, extra 1d4 damage, and it boosts up to 2d4 at 11th level.
Also at 3rd level, we're going to gain Toxic Tradecraft. This specifies that you get a Poisoner's Kit, have proficiency in the Poisoner's Kit, and are very good at using the Poisoner's Kit. But on top of that, it gives you another feature. It allows you to use your spell slots to enhance the toxins that you are using with your envenomed attacks. So now when you hit a creature with a weapon that is coated in your poison, you can expend a spell slot to do additional damage and apply one of several toxins. The toxins available to you are based on the level of spell slot that you use, ranging from 1st to 5th level and increasing in potency the higher the level of spell slot is.
So basically, it's Smite. It's Poison Smite for Rangers. And what's cool about it is that the Smite, instead of the Smite dealing additional damage when you use a higher level spell slot, you get more powerful effects for using a higher level slot. Although any slot level poisons the target until the end of your next turn. And what that means is that anytime you Ranger Smite, Ranger Poison, I'm just going to call this ability Ranger Poison Smite. it means that your Ranger Poison Smite is dealing extra damage, but it's also a debuff that is causing that target to have disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks, which is what the poison condition does. And then you're adding other effects on top of that.
Those extra effects range from other debilitating features like blinding a target or immobilizing them, or just doing a boatload of extra damage. The ones I'm noting are all higher level features, but there's a lot throughout this that will do additional debuffs, additional damage, or other small little effects like that.
It's actually great. Like, one of the things that we've talked about on the show before is that Rangers and Paladins have a lot of mechanical similarities, except that Rangers don't have they don't have Smite to dump their spell slots into. This subclass basically says, hey Ranger, wouldn't you like to Smite like a Paladin? And the answer is, yes, I would. But then it's like, would you also like to have extra effects that is... Basically, the subclass has the full suite of Paladin Smite spells baked into it.
And you really do get to feel like so many classes, when you take proficiency in a Poisoner's kit and you're like, I want to play the Poisoner, and you don't ever feel like that theme comes to life. Boy, are you going to feel like that theme came to life.
I can hear people being like, but this is a subclass based around poison, and so many monsters are immune or resistant to poison damage. Some of these Ranger Smites strip away the poison resistance and immunity, or change the poison to acid damage. So it comes with its own built-in tools for dealing with that.
At 7th level, you're going to gain poison control. Now you are resistant to poison damage, and you have advantage on saving throw against the poison condition. On top of that, you have the ability to cast the protection from poison spell without expending a spell slot. You can do this a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier, regaining all the uses when you finish a long rest.
At 11th level, you get variegated vexation, which allows you to change the poison damage to different damage types, such as acid or necrotic.
At 15th level, when you take damage from an attack, you can use your reaction to give yourself temporary hit points equal to the damage that you would have taken. Those temporary hit points disappear at the end of your turn. I think, generally speaking, the 7th, 11th, and 15th level features are they're okay, but it doesn't matter because we're playing with Poison Smites.
Yeah, Ranger Poison Smites, honestly, I like them. I like the execution of this. It comes together really well. It deals a very coherent theme, which is versatile, which is powerful, which is interesting. S tier.
I agree. It's actually incredible that you can read the final 3 abilities, say those aren't the best.
I'll take them.
But still realize that you're playing one of the best Ranger subclasses because you're here for the poison effects. And really the other thing you're getting as you level up is availability to use higher level spell slots for more potent poison abilities. So you're still getting more powerful as you level up. The other features you get are just kind of bread and butter on top of the delicious meal that you're getting from your toxin.
And the subclass did not commit the cardinal sin of the poison based class, which is not giving you the options of not poisoning. Like it comes with the tools so that if you're fighting undead and constructs, you still feel like you have class features to use against them, which is great. I think that this easily stands beside a Gloomstalker. Easily.
As a matter of fact, I think this one and the Gloomstalker are a pretty deadly duo, a terrifying team that actually feel like they would work together. Yeah, S tier.
Finally, we got the Vermin Lord. This subclass covers the same thematic ground sort of as the Swarm Keeper and the Beastmaster, in that and so it's kind of like, hey, what if the Swarm Keeper actually had a swarm that followed it that was a separate monster in the same way as the Beastmaster?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, it's interesting that our 2 Ranger subclasses are Poison and Pestilence. It's like Poison and Vermin.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, that's Grim Hollow, baby.
Yeah.
So again, right away, you get an expanded spell list for this Ranger based on the theme. These spells are Consumption, Animal Messenger, Flash Fever, Freedom of Movement, and Contagion.
Then at 3rd level, once per short or long rest, we can expend a ranger spell slot to summon a swarm of vermin. This is a stat block that is included right here in the book, so it is one of those nice and handy-dandy scaling stat blocks that uses your ranger level and your proficiency bonus to determine things like its attack bonus and its armor class and its number of hit points. Its AC is pretty low, 9 plus your proficiency bonus. Its hit points are 9 plus 5 times your ranger level. And it bites people for 2d6 plus 1 damage. What's notable here are 2 things. First, no action is required from you to command your swarm. So it will fight and do stuff without you needing to spend a bonus action, unlike many other pet classes. You just need to verbally command it. If you don't give it a verbal command, it dodges. What's also cool is that the level of the spell slot used determines the number of swarms you summon.
Yeah, so you can summon up to 5 swarms at higher level.
So all the swarms have the same stats. They have the same number of hit points and everything like that, but you're going to get more of them as you gain levels, which is a cool way of scaling. Also, just going to flag here, super annoying for the DM. Because now they act after you in combat, and so basically you're going to take your turn, and then you're going to take your turn for like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 swarms that are all going to get to move and attack.
Now, mind you, the attacks are extremely simple. It's not complex what the swarms do. You move into the enemy's space and you bite them for 2d6 plus 1 damage. So they're going to be quick turns, luckily.
Yeah.
They're not even as complex, I'd say, as a zombie or skeleton turn. So I actually do think it's not too much of a problem. You're essentially making up to 5 extra attacks on your turn for a little bit of damage.
At 5th level, the swarm has 34 hit points. So they're tough enough that they're not going to get wiped out by a fireball.
Yeah. The whole idea of a swarm is that you can be stabbing them. I always picture that each time you hit, you're actually killing a bunch of them, but there's so many of them.
And because they're swarms, they have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, and immunity to a boatload of conditions. So these swarms are super, super tanky. They don't deal a lot of damage, but they're going to get in the way.
They're going to tie up enemies because being covered in rats is not fun for anybody.
Yeah. They're not flying swarms, worth noting. The flavor here is actually a little Pied Piper. Like, here's a bunch of rats.
If you've seen the movie Willard, and you should, then you get to play as Willard. Have you seen the movie Willard?
No.
Also at 3rd level, you gain Septic Strikes. Now when your vermin swarms do damage, you can use a bonus action to have them do an additional 1d4 necrotic damage. Because you're not using your bonus action to command the swarms, essentially the swarms act for free, and if you want to use your bonus action, you can enhance their damage.
Or you can, make an extra attack yourself with Crossbow Expert or 2-weapon fighting, or move your Hunter's Mark around.
But if you do have more swarms and they all attack different enemies, then you could be using your bonus action to do 1d4 to each of the enemy's attack.
Yeah, conceivably, if you had 2 swarms and you attack twice, you could attack 4 different targets, and then bonus action to make them all take a d4 extra damage. But you know what? It's but we already got the thing that's cool.
And this is just amping up. And both of these are 3rd level features. So this is just an extra icing on the already existent great 3rd level feature.
7th level, we get Filth and Fortitude. We get proficiency in con saves. Sweet. Like it. And we're immune to disease. Also like it. Again, nothing special, but I'm not going to complain.
So at 11th level, we gain Infectious Spread. This enhances our Septic Strike. So it might have been at first, but now we can make that strike cause all of those creatures that were bitten by our rats to make a Constitution saving throw or become poisoned. We can use this a number of times equal to our Wisdom modifier. In my opinion, now Septic Strikes is worth it because you're going to nibble. Then all of them might get poisoned. They have to make saves, so there is a save. But poisoning a bunch of targets is much more worth my bonus action.
Yeah. At 15th level, we get Strength of the Swarm. if you take damage and one of your swarms is within 5 feet of you, you can spend your reaction to shunt the damage onto the swarm instead of you. Great save your life feature. Wouldn't have mind having this a little bit earlier than 15th level, but I'll take it. This is a really strong subclass. It's a really nice twist on the Beastmaster. The stat block of the swarm is the real meat of this whole thing, because the fact that the swarm comes to you with resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, and that you can have multiples of them, means that you're going to just put down a bunch of these swarms and they're just going to body block and absorb a ton of damage while you're back there just shooting.
This is another subclass that knew its theme going into it and knew exactly what story it wanted to tell and delivered it perfectly. The stat block for the Swarm of Vermin is also very unassuming. If you didn't notice the resistances and the immunities, at first you're just like, oh, it doesn't do a whole lot of damage. But the whole point is that you're putting a boatload of hit points down that have a bunch of resistances that are going to nibble on your enemies, and then you gain features that are going to allow you to amp up that damage or poison those enemies as well. This is crowd control, debilitation, and a lot of bodies on the board that have very simple turns. So again, I actually don't think you have as much of the necromancer problem, because all you want to do with these creatures is tie up your enemies and nibble on them. And there's not much else going on here, so you don't have to worry too much. Who's your target? Swarm them with rats.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful. It is a little bit limited in the fact that you can only summon the swarms once per short rest, and the swarms last for 1 minute. So you could run into a situation with this character where you're only able to have your swarms out like every other combat, which kind of sucks.
That actually, that is a weakness.
It is a big weakness.
That's the whole class.
That's the whole class. I would have thought reading this ability that the swarms, you summon the swarms with the spell slot and they stay until they're destroyed, but they kind of do run away after a minute. And so that does mean that is a real knock to the overall power level of this class, because it's less of a pet class and more of a summoner in a weird way. So I think that line that they go after a minute is the thing that really, really dials the overall power of the subclass back, because it does mean that there's going to be some encounters where if you have to do 2 encounters where they're more than a minute apart, but you're not going to have time to take the short rest between them, which is extraordinarily common in my experience, you're basically going to a fight without a subclass. This one line of text takes the class from an S tier class to a B tier class.
I'm actually devastated right now.
Yeah.
In this realization, because talking about this class, reading it, I forgot about that one sentence, and I was going into this ready to say this was an A+ or S tier subclass. And that one line of text basically says you get a subclass once per short rest.
Yes.
And otherwise you do not get a subclass.
Yeah.
What? If I was allowing this subclass at my table, I would remove that sentence.
I don't know if I would remove the sentence. I might say the swarms last an hour or until destroyed. But
for me, you're using a spell slot. They can go away after a minute. You just need to have spell slots to spend to summon them.
Yeah, it's a tough call. As written, it's a B for me.
It's a B.
Right.
I was so ready to give this very high marks, but it's a B because you only get to use it once per short rest.
Yeah, it really tampers the power of it overall. Without that, it's S tier. And I both these ranger subclasses I think are super cool in their flavor and execution. They have a really neat thing that they're doing. That's just the one disappointing element.
It's so weird. I'm so thrown off right now because I was about to go on a rant about how much I loved this subclass, because first of all, you and I like rats. We have there's something there. I think again, if you haven't seen the movie Willard, it's a great classic horror movie about a guy who can talk to rats, and he's a nerdy guy who gets picked on and decides to take his rat hordes and avenge get vengeance on his enemies. And that always was a fascinating theme to me. It's like, imagine being able to control the vermins and being able to like rise them up against your enemies. And I think that's such a fun and flavorful horror, dark fantasy
trope.
Trope.
Yeah.
So to bring that to life is great. It's just such a disappointment that there's that one sentence that pulls the whole it's like slamming the brakes on this whole.
I mean, the swarms are really strong. They're really, really powerful. So it is kind of, they're more powerful than what you would get from a spell slot normally.
If I was playing this subclass, I would become a really annoying player at the table because I would be counting how many rounds it went and how many seconds that is. And then I'd be like running into the dungeon as fast as I could, just being like, go swarms, go. And I'd be running behind them, trying to find all the enemies and have my wave of rats consume them and then counting my seconds.
Because yes, I feel like the reason why that recharge is there is because it's a little bit hard to figure out what would the wording need to be to stop you from just endlessly summoning more swarms, right? Because a key element of the subclass is that you can have multiple swarms out at the same time, right?
I mean, even a wider limitation, like you can use this a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. Or, you know what, even if we did proficiency bonus, half your proficiency bonus.
Yeah, perhaps something along those lines that would have just allowed you to keep the swarms out there. I think the other thing with this one that's a little bit another like flag is that it's very multi-class prone, because you could dip 3 levels into Ranger, then go full spellcaster, and as worded, you could use like an 8th or 9th level spell slot to summon a bunch of these, to summon even more of these swarms.
That's true. Nothing in here says, does it say Ranger spell?
No, you just have to expend a spell slot. So if
you're like a Ranger Druid, Ranger
Sorcerer. And like the higher level features are fine. The only problem with doing that is that the swarm's hit points are based on your Ranger level.
Right.
So it's a little, so you kind of have to balance that out. But, you know, once the swarms have 50 hit points, which is 10 levels in Ranger, they're pretty robust at that point. And then you could go Druid the rest of the way. I wonder if you could combine that with Shepherd Druid for crazy results.
Worth considering.
Yeah. Right.
All in all, I think that this batch of subclasses is really great. I love the Paladins and the Rangers. I think the themes are very strong for the Grim Hollow setting here, and a lot of delivery on those themes.
Yeah.
If you have thoughts on these subclasses, tell us about them in the comments below.
The videos that we create on our channel are made possible thanks to the incredible generosity of our Patreon supporters. If you enjoy the work that we do here on YouTube, please join us on Patreon. You can get on our patron-only Discord server and have lots of fun chatting with us and all of our other community members. Links are right down below.
And if you love vermin lords and rats, you can check out our actual play in the Worlds of Drakenheim, which is full of rats. You can check that out on Tuesday evenings. All the previous episodes are available right up over here.
And we have plenty more videos tier ranking the content for 5th edition right up over here.
Please subscribe to our channel, like this video, and ring that bell so that you never miss an episode.
Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time in the dungeon.